All right, we're starting a little bit late tonight, but we are still starting. So grab your popcorn. This is going to be an interesting one. We got lots going on. As usual, on this crazy, crazy world of ours, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the little bell icon, because we got a few things coming right up here I'm going to tell you about in just a few seconds. So
T-minus 3 minutes and counting. T-minus 3. We are go with all elements of the mission at this time.
Obviously, the biggest thing tonight is talking about the Vatican. That's one of the big things tonight. There's a couple different things. You got the Vatican talking about how they're preparing to talk about this for sure. We're talking about this. We're going to talk. They're going to talk about talking about this. They're going to explain that they have terms for unexplained flying things. In English, that's what it means. But what's even more interesting is this guy named Nell. Nell just came out of the woodwork as one of the new whistleblowers, and we're going to talk about what he says about this whole deception that's coming upon the world faster than anybody even realizes it. It is an enormous deception. And that's not all. We got several other things that are happening very quickly here, and we're going to talk about all those tonight and why it's relevant. So, hit that subscribe button. We'll see you soon.
We've just passed the 2-minute mark in the countdown. T-minus 1 minute, 54 seconds, and counting. All indications coming in to the control center at this time indicate we are go. Guidance system goes on internal at 17 seconds, leading up to the ignition sequence at 8.9 seconds. T-minus 60 seconds and counting. We passed T-minus 60.
Mysteries to the universe we were never meant to solve. But who we are and why we are here are not among them.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Strange Normal. My name is Bradley. We talk about the stranger things that happen in your normal life to give you a biblical understanding of what is going on. And there's a lot going on. So hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell icon so you're notified when things like this happen. On this channel, we kind of look at the spiritual side of things, obviously, because we are a Christian channel, Christian podcast, but we are focused on this one particular thing, at least on this broadcast, called this UAP deception. This is what's happening right now in your life, and it's not going anywhere, even though it's not on the news, on the mainstream news all the time. It is. It is on some broadcasts, and we're going to show you exactly where those are. But before I do, we don't just cover UAPs and all this other strange spiritualism that's happening right now. We're also going to cover some oddities. Throughout the week, I have built into the program some podcasts. Sometimes I'll have people on to talk about different things that are happening on this channel. Different things that are happening, we talk about on this channel. What am I saying? I'm live. Here we go. You're just listening to me talk. My lips are going. What's going to happen? But this last week, I talked to Scott Ritzma. Some of you might know who that is, and he is a fascinating guy. He did this series called Media on the Brain a long time ago, and he did a really good job at it. But one of the things that he had built into his most recent thing, his most recent series, was something about 2025. There's lots happening in 2025, according to many, many sources. And he said, not only let's dive into what the Christian realm says about 2025 and the 2025 agenda, if you're following me, but also about what the occult says about 2025. There was things I had never even heard of before. And so I thought, it would be interesting to show you a few clips from this. You can watch the full thing, of course, on patreon.com/strangenormal. And I'm going to pull out some of the most interesting stuff throughout the week. But watch this. I think you'll be just as amazed as I was.
So the other things are the Deagle Corporation, Deagle.com. And this is a Pentagon-tied intelligence corporation, private corporation that provides intelligence to National Security Agency. They were cited by Stratfor, which is the biggest global private intelligence outfit out there, and they cite Deagle. So that's how Deagle contributes to the national security apparatus, is through Stratfor. And so these are people in the know, and again, kind of this futurist thing. And they were humble enough to say, this is not a crystal ball, this is not God's word, and I appreciated that. So this is just their take. Back in 2017, they said that by 2025, there would be a reduction in the U.S. population from 327 million to 100 million.
What?
So that's pretty sobering. And a reduction in GDP per capita, in other words, the average person's income annually, from 60,000 down to 25,000. So a major global collapse, economic collapse, and population die-off.
All right, so that's interesting. Again, this is not necessarily always from the sources that we can rely on, but it is interesting that the sources that he pulls from. Now watch this next clip. This is even more interesting.
In my slides, I took a picture of this page in the book for the seminar, because I can't ask people to just take my word. Anybody can buy this book and see all the predictions and add them up. I counted about a 90% track record of their predictions. But one thing that they are saying is going to happen by 2025 is this, number 70. It says, do you see 70 there? Is that coming through okay?
Yeah, I can see it. Yep.
Right there? All right. Now, I can't read it off my slide because I didn't change my slide yet, and I certainly can't read it when I put my book in front of there, but now I'll read it off my slide. Is it showing?
Yeah.
Identification cards will be universal. Smart cards will contain information such as nationality, medical history, perhaps even key data from one's genome, education and employment records, financial accounts, social security, credit status. Now watch this. And even religious and organizational affiliations.
Wow.
Are you...
Okay, so we're going to pause it right there for a second. I think it's interesting that this is all stuff that has been written quite a while ago. I'm not saying that any of it's going to happen. We can't rely on anything except God's word. And so I think it's good to absolutely focus on God's word, know what other things are planned around us, not only spiritual, but also political, and just keep a tab on everything. Don't necessarily be in the of the world, but you're in it. So you have to do something about it and keep track of what's going on. Otherwise, you're going to get blindsided. Or as inspiration says, be duped. Don't be duped by it. And I think that's very, very, very important. Look that up if you don't know, if you haven't seen that word. So if you want to see more about that, because this thing is just chocked full of stuff that we're talking about. Scott goes into detail about where he got this stuff, and just line by line by line by line, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. And we dig further into that. But not only that, we have a whole channel on the Discord based on that, and looking into all these strange events that are predicted. And just like him, I'm using my finger quotes, because we know these things can't necessarily predict anything. They can calculate, they can't predict. So what's happening here? Well, this stuff, there's huge plans in the making for this next couple of years. Let's find out together what happens. So as I've always said, lots of things happening on this channel. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit that little bell icon, and subscribe if you think this stuff is valuable. Go to patreon.com/strangenormal. Now, let's get into what we're talking about actually tonight. This is interesting. So let's dive deep into the Vatican's understanding of this stuff, because I don't think have a full idea of what's going on, but they are willing to dive into it more than any other entity. And obviously, they're going to get it completely wrong, or they really know what's going on, and they're going to try to convince everybody that it's a complete of the lie that's happening. Let's pull it apart. Let's figure out what's happening here, and as we review some of this footage. Okay, watch this.
Are you, as I am, totally confused by that Vatican press conference last week, which laid out apparently new rules for the Vatican in assessing the truthfulness of supernatural and paranormal events? What does it all mean? Well, I've had the task of trying to figure that out for you because, frankly, I found the press conference last week totally confusing. Firstly, let's get UFOs out of the way. I'm told there was no specific mention of UFOs in the new rules, the rules laid down by the Vatican's dicastery for the doctrine of the faith. But there was a question, and the question was asked, what does this all mean about UFOs? And I thought it was very telling that Cardinal Fernandez, when he responded, he appeared to have a prepared statement. And he said, on UFOs, we are truly not specialists. We cannot intervene. It could happen that a certain phenomenon of this kind is linked to a Christian Catholic religious phenomenon, in which case we shall see, but otherwise not. This could also happen in other religions. It's not our task, and outside the faith, certainly even less so. Clear as mud, huh? I've got no idea what that means. What I will tell you is there is a name
right
inside.
There. Okay, so what he's saying is that, we do know that something's happening here, and we're not exactly sure what in the world is happening. But we're going to, and this thing could happen in other religions as well, but maybe we shouldn't touch too much on it right now. They have in their Vatican archives, and we've touched on this in other episodes. If you search Vatican, you can watch a few that talk about this. Vatican archives that actually talk about this stuff. They've got stuff that they've kept. There's another man. If I can remember the guy's name, he's a white-haired, curly-haired guy, old guy, lawyer. Someone's gonna remember it in the chat before I do. But I think what's interesting is he's actually gone down there and he's dug out some of this stuff. And he's not necessarily Christian, but he's someone that researches this stuff and tries to figure out what's this all about. And what is this all about? Because it's not about machines in the sky. Nobody is seeing machines in the sky. Let me make that perfectly clear. I don't believe you're seeing actual physical metal things in the sky floating around. And if you are, you're seeing someone that has actually put something up there to deceive everyone. What you're seeing is deceptions. What you're seeing is manifestations, I think is the appropriate word. And when people see this stuff, they think that they're seeing ET floating around up there, but you're seeing these things basically waving at us saying, hey, come talk to me. We got things to say. Hey, come over here. Because they can't just interrupt our lives. They have to push their agenda on us. And thank you, Feet of Jesus. Danny Sheehan was the guy I was talking about. That is very, very... Oh, Adrian. You got Daniel C. Sheehan. Very good. I think it was actually... I didn't read up far enough. And it's very interesting what's happening right now because that's what we're playing with. We're playing with something that wants to talk to us directly so he can start his deception immediately. And so when people don't know what's going on, they get confused. Now, let me turn off auto next on this thing because I have no idea how it gets turned on. But let's pull into the next clip. The next clip we're going to talk about is still from Ross Coulthart, who's speaking here. And he's talking about where is all this going? Let's see. Unexplained flying things and Martian apparitions is what I wrote down here. This is all he's talking about the Vatican and what they've talked about, because everything they've talked about has been in Italian and translated to English. So I appreciate that he was able to kind of parse this out so we can kind of figure this out because it's a lot. to translate for me. But watch this. This is interesting.
What I will tell you is there is a name inside the Vatican for UFOs, UAPs. They call them RES, Res Inexplicata Voluntes, unexplained flying things. And there is, I know, a degree of interest inside the Vatican in the subject of UFOs, not just because of historical sightings of orbs and other things, and there is a link between those orbs and spheres and glowing entities that links into what are called Marian apparitions, which is what the Vatican's talking about in these rules. It's also the fact that, as my interviewee David Grush, the former senior intelligence officer, told me last year, there is a direct allegation made by David that the Vatican is fully aware of the phenomenon of unidentified anomalous phenomena, or of the reality of non-human intelligence, because they were allegedly involved in the retrieval of a non-human craft from Italy to the United States in or about 1944.
All right, so that much has come out in Congress. That's not just some bizarre number he pulled out of the back from the back of his hand. He absolutely pulled that from David Grush. David Grush has come forward and said that absolutely there has been, and there's proof, according to records from the government, the U.S. government, stating that in 1933 they were given or pulled something that was very strange to the Vatican, and they have been reverse engineering it. And it's something that's the technology was far beyond what they had back then. I don't know what that is. Is it a deception? Is it part of this Prometheus idea of, hey, you rub the spirits back and we'll give you some treat type thing? I don't know. We're going to find that out, I think, in our lifetime, perhaps even within a decade. We're going to dig further into that when that comes down the line, but he's right. The Vatican is digging into this because they believe that what they're seeing is Marian apparitions. Marian apparitions is the spiritualism that they think they're seeing Mary come and talk to people, like the incident in South Africa, was it? I forget where, but they had these kids that saw a bunch of something come and talk to them and tell them some stuff, and there was missing time, and the kids were scared, and then they had this thing, but they all had the same story, and the Vatican or Catholic Church at the time didn't want to make anyone fear, so they said, "Well, this is a Marian apparition. You know, this is what happens sometimes." It's definitely not what happens sometimes. You only see this stuff during the occult, and there's actually a book coming out that reveals that there's a huge tie to the occult with what happened here, but I can't go into it because the book's not out yet. So I'm going to dig into my sources. I'm going to ask someone if I can reveal that information a little bit later on the program here, because you're not going to get this information from ufology. They don't want you to know that this has anything to do with spiritualism, anything to do with the Bible or the occult. They just want you to believe it's little green men or ET or someone watching us like a zookeeper out there. And so that's what's happening right now. We're seeing this stuff, and this has been seen forever and ever, but it has huge ties to spiritualism. And so that's where we're going. But that's not all. So let's continue and listen to what he has to say, this last clip about the Vatican from Ross Coulthart. Are all UAPs interpreted as religious things? Let's see.
But I'm fascinated in the fact that throughout history there have been, and we explored this recently on Reality Check. You can go back and have a look at my conversation with theologian Paul Thigpen and Congressman Tim Burchett, where we talked about the possibility that what have been perceived through religious faiths as religious apparitions of, say, the Mother Mary at Medjugorje, are they perhaps UFOs, UAPs, some kind of non-human intelligence manifesting itself to human beings and being interpreted in a religious way?
Congressman Tim Burchett of Tennessee joins us live. He is...
Pause it right there for a second. That's so he's saying, is it little green men that are saying that, oh, look, it's us. We've come to talk to you, and we want to tell you that we're good people, or good things, or good entities. And by the way, we have been misinterpreted by religion as gods. In fact, you can be your own god. I'm sure they've got all kinds of things to say, but it's actually the reverse, Ross. If you're watching this, it's the completely reverse. This is a religious manifestation that's pretending to be ET. This isn't ET pretending to be religious. I don't know how can you get that? How can we get that so confused when it's clearly very, very deceptive, and it goes along with exactly what the Bible says. You can't believe this thing is benevolent. You have to go back to my video on the top 20 reasons this thing is demonic. Watch it. It's clear. It's clear. It's not clear as mud. It's clear as day. So as we get farther into this, let's look at actual news that has talked about this in this last week, because that's what we kind of do on this channel, is we focus on what's being done about this, and it's follow the progression of events, because this is coming down the line really fast, and we want to make sure we keep up on it. And I'm going to be doing this. What was that? Oh, what was this thing? I want to make sure I keep up on it, because I'm going to be doing that anyway, and might as well show you guys too what's happening. So I collect these clips, and let's just watch them together. All right. So the first one is about. It is about where's the money going. Okay. So he really gets into this for a second here. It's kind of a long clip. It's Let's see what Tim Burchett says about this. We kind of seen what he says before, but he does get into the religious aspect of this, and I love it that he does, because he is a religious man. I just wish he would make it more clear what he understands is going on here. Let's find out.
Congressman Tim Burchett of Tennessee joins us live. He is the chair of the UAP caucus, member of the House Oversight Committee as well. Congressman Burchett, thanks for being back with us here on the Hill. Appreciate it. Tell us why you decided to do this. Why do you feel this is needed?
Well, I guess I'm the unelected chair. I think it's needed because you just showed the Tic Tac video taken by one of our very brave pilots. And I had one of those pilots not very long ago tell me one of these objects was 14 feet away from his canopy as he was flying. Yet our federal government, many departments tell us they don't exist, yet they're still being funded tens of millions of dollars. They issue redacted reports about UFOs. And our own Pentagon, who has not passed an audit in the history of audits, literally cannot account for over $500 billion. Now we're spending this money on something. We're $35 trillion in debt. Every 100 days, we add another $1 trillion to our deficit. Look, it's not about little green men or flying saucers. It's what are we spending this dadgum money on? It's ridiculous.
What do you think?
Well, I think there's some members that know some things. I think that's a bunch of balloons right there. But the one prior, the Tic Tac video, if you could hear the audio of the pilots who were chasing it, I think you would think something else. And we have too many reports from too many qualified people, former admirals telling me something's under the water going 200 miles an hour, big as a football field. You know, it's too much. Just tell us what it is. We don't care. It's not going to upset my religious beliefs. I'm still going to believe Jesus died on the cross for me. It's not going to change one bit. All it's going to say is this universe is a lot bigger than we give it credit for. We're one grain of sand on a million beaches. Give us the information. Let us decide.
Wow, isn't that interesting? So this is on the news right now, people. This is what's happening. And so Tim Burchett, he is talking about how absolutely he doesn't care what it is. It's not going to affect his religion. It is going to affect religion. It may not affect his directly. I think there's a lot of people that actually do believe that this is a huge deception that's coming. But as soon as it is affected, people are going to start reaching out to these things. As soon as we do, or the government does reveal that there are something else happening, people are going to start reaching out. They're going to start coming together in groups and reaching out to these things the best they know how. And obviously, there is already a protocol about how to reach out to these things called Stephen Grude's CE5, which is basically Eastern meditation. So you can reach out to these things through... and this Eastern meditation is kind of the opposite of prayer. And so it's emptying yourself so something can come into you. What is prayer? What you're asking God to come into you so you can empty yourself. See the exact opposite of what's going on here? So you want to make sure that you are praying correctly. There is an order of operations that's very important. You don't want to empty yourself. That's sweeping out your house so 7 more demons can come in. And so what's happening here is that when things happen, when things the government starts revealing this stuff, people are going to start saying, yeah, I want to talk to these things, empty myself so that they can come into me. Let's play CE5. And there is something, I'm going to say this much as far. There is something to when a multitude of people get together, whether it's for good or evil, and ask spiritual entities to do something, there is more and more power. I don't know the full extent. I don't think we will understand the full extent of how that works on this side of eternity. But I do think that there is power in when you have multiple people come together. So think about it. Think about how all the disciples prayed when it was Pentecost. Think about they want a group of people coming together. Jesus says, when 2 or more are gathered, there he is. But there is also this huge power when a bunch of people come together and do something like this. So there's also, Satan like to have a counterfeit of what God has. Let's say you have a bunch of people come together and do CE5. They're praying to entities, basically. And they're going to be infected by them, too. The government has specifically said when things like this happen, when you see these things, that you have a follow-home effect, or a hitchhiker effect is what they call it. And so it's not just, hey, once and done, and then now the spiritual realm has power to do something evil. It's a hitchhiker effect, and it walks around with you. This is the same thing that happens when you do ayahuasca or DMT. It's not just a one-time thing. Somehow this door, and I'm going to use their terms because I don't know how else to explain it, but something else is opened, and you're allowed. And they're allowed to infect your life for a period, or at least until you ask God to get rid of it. And what happens if you don't know God? What are you to do? You're going to be messed with for a long time by that thing until it gets bored. And these things don't get bored easy. So that's fascinating. So that's the one thing he said. He said that he also thinks that it's military balloons. That one thing, the thing that I've often said on here that I think is a floating plant. It's a floating fern that they've caught on IR camera that some entity has just picked up and started wandering around the base with. It could be just a bunch of balloons that someone released so that they could prove it wrong someday. So someday someone's going to come out and say, hey, look, see, I told you this whole thing's stupid. It's just a bunch of balloons. Yeah, it could be what's going on. It could be that it's a mixture of both, too. We don't know. We're following this, and we're going to find out exactly what's going on. But absolutely, those Tic Tac videos, watch out. That's kind of exactly what people are seeing. Round objects in the sky, especially at night, that glow. You never know. You just never know. Okay, so let's get into something else that I thought was interesting this week. We had something big happened. Someone named Colonel Carl E. Nell came out of the woodwork, and he has been a lifelong veteran. I'm going to pull his LinkedIn resume over here so I can kind of talk about him a little bit. He's going to tell you all about who he is, but he is a lifelong military veteran. I guess you could say veteran. I'm not sure if he's still in there or not. Probably not now that he's coming out and talking about this stuff. But he's been in there since the 90s. It looks like his education ended in, it doesn't show me. 1990. And he became commander of U.S. Space Command. Was there a Space Command in the 90s? I don't remember. Maybe someone in the military can tell me. Then part of the Bell Labs. Oh, that's interesting. Bell Labs, 94. Senior systems engineer from 96 to 1998. That's an IT career for SATCOM. Okay, lead SATCOM. Defense Intelligence Agency, 2001 to 2003. Defense, and this is all important, so forgive me for just going over this stuff and not telling why this is important, because I think you're going to see it very relevant here in a second. But he was the deputy CTO, that's Chief Technology Officer and Director of Systems Engineering and Integration, another IT-related career from 1998 to 2011, and then Vice President of Solutions Architecture, let's see, from 2011 to 2013. Chief Strategy Officer, CSO, U.S. Army Reserves. Okay, so he's reserves. So the jury's out on how long he has been in the military. This is interesting. I'm coming down Commander of Operations in 1990, and now I see maybe this is all in the military, but he's just been hopping around to different places in the military. Chief Strategy Officer, CSO. And let's go up to Deputy COO. Man, this guy's been top of the line. Special Program Colonel, U.S. Africa Command, from 2016 to 2018 for 2 years. And for the last 6 years, from 2018 to present, he's been the advisor to Vice Chief of Staff of the Army in Army Futures Command in the Pentagon. So this is not some small thing. This guy he even looks like, I'm gonna switch it over here. He even looks like a commander.
I was fortunate. I had a.
I'm gonna tell you. He's gonna tell you exactly what he knows. But you can see his name there down there at the bottom in case you want to look him up. But he's gonna talk a little bit about some stuff that he's pretty direct about, and leads me to believe that this is actually coming out pretty quick here. But Colonel Carl E. Nell, listen to what he has to say about himself, and then we'll go into what he has to say about this whole UAP thing.
So I was fortunate. I had a 4-year ROTC scholarship to Penn. I graduated with a degree in electrical engineering. The Army sent me overseas to do Signal Corps engineering projects, so I did a lot of strategic comm projects in Europe. I ended up working in Army Space Command. I commanded a satellite ground station, war trace to the Joint Chiefs. I spent some time at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. The Army ultimately sent me to get a master's in mechanical engineering, a master's in strategic studies, graduate work in computer science. I was on track to stay in, but I decided that I wanted to pursue more of a technical career. So I got out and ended up working at Bell Labs, which was a fantastic place. Unfortunately, I was there during the trivestiture that folks may be familiar with, where the company got split up. I left Bell Labs and ended up working in Lockheed Missiles and Space. I worked at Northrop Grumman. I've ran strategic technology programs in the defense industry, worked for a lot of the three-letter agencies, ultimately was a deputy chief of staff, or deputy CTO for a $2 billion company. I was a vice president general manager of a Northern Virginia-based R&D firm. I stayed in the military, in the reserve. I commanded at every grade level through brigade. I was fortunate to stand up the Army's newest expeditionary MI brigade. I was the deputy chief of staff for a combatant command. Ultimately, this experience sort of combined to give me the opportunity to come in and advise Army Futures Command, the largest reorganization in the Army Reserve since really 1973, on how the Army could be more effective. And my last assignment was involved with the UAP task force, which maybe is the most apropos for this discussion.
Boom. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Okay, so his last assignment was UAP task force. I want to also mention, thank you, Lisa, in the chat. She says that there it is. Space Command started in 1985. I was wondering when that started. A few seconds ago. And also, Lisa's also been in the military, so that's why she knows that. She also has met him. And also, Carl, this guy, is also a member of Gary Nolan's SOL, S-O-L Foundation, like David Grutch and Jacques Vallée, Diana, I didn't know that, Diana, that lady that is part of the education system that's writing books and believing that this thing's all religious, but from a different angle. It's very, very, very interesting to see everything that's coming on. By the way, thank you, Adrian, for that information. everything that's happening right now. So what does this guy have to say about this whole stuff? That's what we're here for. And before we are going to get into that, I want to ask that you hit that like button. We don't have a lot of likes tonight. And I want to make sure that like button's hit so that it brings in more viewers. For some reason, the like button and how many people are actually watching the program correlates. I'm not sure why. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you want more of this and to follow this as the deception progresses. Because we're going to see a few things that are happening here. And I believe it's going to be in a year. I mean, in 12 months, we're going to see some pretty bizarre stuff. And so I want to make sure that everyone is informed and everyone knows what's going on. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you think this is valuable, help us on Patreon, patreon.com/strangenormal. Let's get into it. Here we go.
Israel's Space Force has said the same thing. Chris Mellon, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Intel, SAPCO, has essentially said the same thing. Lou Elizondo has said the same thing. David Grush has said the same thing. David Grush cleared for presidentially level material. So you're looking at people that are in a position to know this, and they're telling you the same thing. You could take a look at the Gang of Eight in the Senate and in Congress. So there's two members of the Gang of Eight, Marco Rubio and Senator Chuck Schumer, that signed up to the UAP disclosure amendment last year that basically said they're not being told the truth and we need to push forward on that. So that's sort of an overview of some of the data. From a first principles standpoint, what's so unusual about this realization? There's billions of stars in the galaxy. Life here evolved in 500 million years, which is basically a blink of an eye. We've found planets around every star that we've looked at. It's likely that the universe is full of life. If you look at the SETI program in particular, the SETI program has all the same assumptions that you would accept and probably make with respect to this topic, except that they believe that non-human intelligence is transmitting signals here. But at the same time, like, we're not transmitting signals. SETI doesn't transmit signals, and the only signals that are actually broadcast of high enough power into space for somebody to pick up come from broadcast television and ballistic missile early warning systems.
Wait, listen to that. Why did he mean by that, and why did he bring that out? Listen to that again.
SETI doesn't transmit signals, and the only signals that are actually broadcast of high enough power into space for somebody to pick up come from broadcast television and ballistic missile early warning systems.
Why in the world was that mentioned? I have a theory, and I want to see if you guys are picking this up too, because we're going to pop back over to me just for a second, because I think this is pretty important. What? Okay, so obviously we know that SETI has been listening for ET signals for a long time, and what he's saying here is that, ET doesn't need to broadcast. That's why we don't pick them up. Now let's get into their mindset just for a second. They think that there should be some powerful signals that are being sent out, as if aliens, if you know a little bit about radio and how it works and how signals progress through the electromagnetic spectrum, you know that they happen on these waves called frequencies, right? I'm a ham radio operator. I know a little bit about waves and how things work. But I think what's interesting is, why would the rest of the universe, especially if they're not physical like this, or they have the ability to be in a different realm or not physical, why would they even use radio? There has to be something else. Maybe they're tapping in. Maybe God has made something that allows them to tap into space itself and progress messages through some kind of different method that is much more efficient. But because we're limited and they don't take this model as the basis of their understanding, there is this idea that ET out there somewhere will be using frequencies to communicate with the rest of the world. It drives me nuts. But what he's saying is, they're not going to reach out to anything, because either you have this idea of a dark forest, which I talked about in a Patreon episode where I went out to my forest and it was completely silent. It was the spookiest thing, where everything is feared, everything is worried about everything, and they don't want to reach out or yell out into the universe because they're worried that something would come after them. Or maybe, he's going to mention this in a second here, maybe they are absolutely a society that doesn't need anything, They're completely self-sufficient, and they're not looking for any help. And so why would they reach out for anything right now? They don't need anything. And so that's their understanding of the universe, that if you don't need anything, you don't reach out, but you're always listening. And what helps us reach out? Well, only thing that is able to reach out at those amounts of megawatts into the galaxy would be our TV broadcasting system and our early alert systems, our systems that go out and tell of an impending disaster. Do you see where I'm going here? If you don't, I'm gonna reveal it. This is interesting. So he's saying that these impending disasters that might come upon the world are gonna make major broadcasts throughout the world, and maybe something then will reach out to us once they say, we heard your signals, we heard your early warning systems, we heard your cry for help, and we've come to help you. Sound familiar? Roger Murnau said something similar, that beings, spirits, demon spirits, will declare themselves to be inhabitants of far distant galaxies, coming to Earth to tell us of the impending destruction of the planet unless we do something proper to avoid it. Very similar to what he's saying, I think. Let's listen to that again, and we'll complete it this time.
Like, we're not transmitting signals. Signal City doesn't transmit signals, and the only signals that are actually broadcast of high enough power into space for somebody to pick up come from broadcast television and ballistic missile early warning systems, which you could argue our technology is moving away from. We're going to satellite, we're going to fiber. Broadcast TV is a thing of the past. And if you get to some state where society is stable, maybe we don't need ballistic missile early warning systems. So the other guy is probably not going to transmit. But what the other guy may do is come here if that's possible to do. And there's physics models that suggest that may be possible.
Yet the government...
Boy, he's preempting us, isn't he? The other guy might come here. Boy, I don't know how the Auto Next gets on. I got to look that up. I'm going to turn that off again. Fascinating stuff that's happening right now. And so that's essentially what he's saying is, look, if something does happen, then it's going to be because we have alerted them, because we're in some kind of dark forest that and they might come out and try to help us. I'm sure that's what they want us to think. So, but this gets you an idea of what the mindset of the government is thinking about when you're thinking about this. This guy's been in the military 30 years. He's got a good idea by rubbing shoulders with all the big guys, and this is what they think is going on right now. Look, all these planets, they have life. Surely somebody's listening. I mean, if they're more advanced that they can traverse across the galaxy, then surely they are self-sufficient. I mean, that's what all of our media has told us, right? Star Trek, oh, they have a ship that is basically their god, and it provides them food, it provides them all this stuff, transportation, an environment, everything you need. So they're completely self-sufficient. They need nothing. They don't even have a money society. And so they're thinking, well, maybe these type of people will come and save us, because that's what we've seen in the media, and that's their theories based on art. So let's see which one we're on right now. We only alert aliens with our early warning systems. Why does the government not disclose this? So this is interesting, since it's coming from an actual military officer. I want to see exactly what he says so we can get the idea from him. Let's dig into this further on what he says.
Yet the government itself has not formally disclosed. They've been very reluctant to do that. Why? Why do you think that is?
So there's 6 basic reasons, and this, again, you could draw this out from first principles. There's a national security reason. There's the lack of a plan. There's the potential for societal disruption. There's the possibility that there's some non-public agreement. There's the potential for misdeeds and the desire to cover up misdeeds. And there's just the basic organizational intransigence and lack of priority that might be associated with the topic. So all these things are factors. The issue is that really the national security issue subsumes all the others. And so there's an opportunity maybe to contract the national security issue, similarly to what was done with nuclear weapons and nuclear energy, such that nuclear energy is not necessarily classified and is available to the public. But lack of a plan and the potential for societal disruption are key ingredients that would prevent any responsible leader from coming forward with information that they don't have the means to address in a responsible way. It would be irresponsible to do that.
Interesting, huh? So he puts out these 4 different reasons. Let's listen to those last 2 real quick, just real quick.
The national security issue, similarly to what was done with nuclear weapons and nuclear energy, such that nuclear energy is not necessarily classified and is available to the public. But lack of a plan and the potential for societal disruption are key ingredients that would prevent any responsible leader from coming forward with information that they don't have the means to address in a responsible way.
Interesting, huh? Wow. So what he's saying is, and either you got to play it in two routes here. Either it's from a deception of the government, who they're pushing their narrative, or it's actually what he's rubbed shoulders with and what the guys are saying. Hey, we see this stuff out there. We don't know what it is. We don't have a plan about it because we have no idea what's happening with it. But we know that this deception's coming down the line. So I'm amazed our government isn't planned for it, because this is going to really blow everyone's mind when this deception does occur. Are we not ready to confront our faith tradition? Now, this is what really got weird, because then he started going directly into faith when someone asked him a question that had very little to do with it. And this is what I think would really perk everyone's ears up. So if you're watching, now is the time to actually zone in and understand exactly what he's saying here. So listen to this. This is fascinating.
Are you implying that perhaps we as a society may not be ready for disclosure? Or are you saying that we may not be able to defend ourselves against this other force?
So there's sort of different viewpoints on whether people are ready to deal with this phenomenon. And popular culture is kind of infused with this stuff. Roswell became a meme a long time ago. We got programs on ancient aliens, Skinwalker Ranch, all this stuff. I guess I would draw an analogy, though, for people that believe in a certain faith tradition, whatever that faith tradition is, and hold to that and subscribe to that in a very serious and devout way, and sort of pose the question, even for folks of that ilk, and I would count myself as one, if you're confronted with the reality of your religious belief system, like the reality of the metaphysical, an angel, a messenger from God, what have you, that's going to be a sea state change in your way of dealing with reality, right? Even though you already believe it, right? So it's one thing to believe and it's another to know. And I think in this context, this phenomena has the potential for an analogous effect both on the individual and on society.
Yeah. Do you?
What? Wait a second. What? Let's cut that over again. Roll that back.
Are you implying that perhaps we as a society may not be ready for disclosure?
Okay, so that was the question. Are we not ready for disclosure? And he says, well, no, we're ready for disclosure. Well, we might not be ready for disclosure because we'll have to meet the physical reality of our belief system. Right? What does that mean? Okay, that's essentially exactly what we've been saying on this channel. This deception's going to be what the occult calls if I can remember the term off the top of my head, the externalization of the hierarchy. This is something I'm going to go into deep with Walter Veith when we have him on the channel. We haven't done that yet. I see a couple people asking in the chat because they know I'm probably leading up to this. When we're going to have Walter Veith on the channel. He's coming this summer in a couple months, and we're definitely going to talk with him about that because this is very, very interesting. In fact, we talked a lot about it in this last talk with the guy I had on the channel with the 2 clips at the very beginning. What was his name? RC. Oh man, it must be. I must not have my vitamins today. What's his name? But you can watch the full thing on there. It's very, very fascinating on Patreon, patreon.com/strangenormal. This is interesting. So he's saying that we're going to come face to face with our reality on this thing. What does that even mean, huh? Let's see. Are we not ready to confront our faith tradition? Is this a threat to humanity? Well, we all know what that is, right? We know what the threat to humanity. Thank you, Deb. Scott Ritzma was the name of the person I was trying to remember. Scott Ritzma has talked a lot about 2025, and it's got we did an hour talking about the different things in 2025 that we're doing that is planned according to many different sources. But you'll have to dig further by going to patreon.com/strangenormal. Watch this. This is the next clip we have. Is this threat to humanity? Do we need to fear this or not? Well, let's find out. Let's find out what he's got to say about this.
Or are you saying that, do you think that the phenomena, this non-human form of intelligence, represents a threat to humanity?
So this is a good question too, and some of the other folks have sort of framed things in that light. And I guess I would suggest that if the universe is governed by conservation laws, and it's probably reasonable to assume the laws of nature that we understand apply everywhere. We may have incomplete understanding, undoubtedly we do, of these laws, but they're sort of homogeneous and they apply throughout the universe. And so those laws are governed by conservation rules. There's conserved quantities. And so this reality really forces a Darwinian type competition in order to survive. And so it's reasonable to assume any other civilization that's evolved has come up through the same Darwinian evolutionary process. So I think it's naive to expect complete altruism until and unless you get to a state of post-scarcity, where you essentially have no physical needs that we're kind of encumbered with in this universe.
So he's kind of getting to some theory here, but this kind of gives you an idea what the government really believes about this stuff. He's saying exactly what we said just a couple clips ago, saying that if this entity, whatever it is, appears and it doesn't have any needs, if it doesn't have anything that it needs, well then it's probably going to be benevolent. But if it has needs and it's here to suck our resources, then we should fear it. We should fear what's going on. I'm sure when this deception appears, it's going to say, hey, we don't have any needs. In fact, we can heal you. We can provide a zero energy. We can solve your energy crisis. We can make sure that you have plenty of food on your planet. We have no problems with this. In fact, we have a surplus and we can provide. We are God. We created you. That's what this thing is going to come and it's going to do. And so if it's this idea that this thing is absolutely unneedy, well, people are going to accept it as, well, it doesn't need anything. Well, it must be good for you then. It must be good. It's deceiving us. I think the thing that we've lost is there's much more than Earth resources that are at stake here. There's a huge, great controversy between good and evil that's at stake here. And what these things are doing, they're vying for your salvation, which is coming in the clouds, because they want their place back in heaven. And we're going to take it. In other words, we're taking their spot. So, of course, they want they want a resource, and that resource has nothing to do with Earth. They're on Earth right now. And they're going to pretend to be from a long distance away. That's what's going on here. Let's listen to the rest of this clip.
And so in some sense, it's the economics of the future that are going to determine whether there's cooperation, competition, or some kind of symbiosis, and inform the intention. But to assume either malintent or complete altruism, I think, is somewhat naive.
Yeah. So it sounds like what you're saying is it's impossible to know the true intentions of a higher intelligence. We may be competing for the same scarce resources. We may not be, right? We may be almost irrelevant to them, and they may be acting altruistically, although we cannot safely assume that. Do you think that it's imperative?
Let's pause it right there for a second. And so he's absolutely saying that we'll just find out when we find out, I guess. So who's going to be affected by this whole thing? That's what he's going to get into next. It's going to affect everybody because even religion has something to say about this, he says. Watch this.
Do you think that it's imperative that the United States leads on the disclosure efforts?
So this is an interesting question, too, because this is a global phenomenon, and it's affecting other countries just like the United States. The reporting on this is clear over decades. Other countries have reported this stuff. And not only that, the Vatican has come out and made statements that reference or tangentially reference this topic. So organized religion has a say in this topic as well. So it's really a whole of planet, whole of humanity problem. And so the U.S. has got its role to play, but these other countries have their role to play, and it would behoove us to recognize that U.S. action could be preempted by another party, and it would be probably more conducive to work collectively.
Yep, there you go. And so everyone's got a thing to say, and everyone's got everyone's got skin in the game on this thing. And so it's important, he says, that that we understand this thing. I believe it's important to understand this thing. We need to understand it from the right perspective, though. If you don't have this right perspective, you could end up in the wrong side of things. So I think knowing that these things are not from long distance away, which in effect, that's kind of the whole, or one of the major points of evolution now. The whole reason it was brought up in the 1800s and spiritualism disappeared in the 1700s. The whole black cat crossing your path and the whole superstitions that would happen. Those were real things back then, but that all went away for the most part, at least especially in the West. And so then you had this idea of Darwinian evolution that came along and says we actually there's nothing but us physical self, and all this stuff came around from evolutionary process from the bird beak and everything. If you read that book, at the beginning of the book, it actually says this is all theory anyway. But I think it's fascinating that he is saying specifically that we need to understand this, and he gives an evolutionary standpoint. When you start out with the foundation that's wrong, your whole building's going to collapse. That's the long and short of it. So that's essentially the last clip I have tonight. And you're exactly right, Hans. Aliens are going to offer us universal health care, universal basic income, maybe Obama phone too. Who knows? And they want everyone hooked on them. They don't want anybody to leave them, and they want to be your daddy. That's their need right here is to be their only one. And so it's and who knows, maybe they'll come and say, we've got a challenge with our own atmosphere. I don't know. That 3-body problem was very strange, Leah. I'm not sure how that fits in yet, but it is. We did a whole episode on that. And regarding that, what's interesting is they're doing a whole nother season on the 3-body problem. So watch for that. We're going to cover the next 3-body problem. I'm not sure if they're going to do a 3rd season, but I know they wanted to do 3 because there was 3 books. We'll see how deep that deception goes. What I found in a lot of media is it starts out pretty good, just like most songs. They start out pretty good. And then the songs that they don't play on the radio, or the songs further down into the song, is where the real deception comes in. It might sound all good at the beginning, but you buy the whole album, or you listen to the complete song, or you watch the whole thing, and then that's where the real seed is planted. And so that's where you really got to watch out for stuff. So I'm just glancing through the chat here. Yeah. Very good. This has been a kind of a short show. We only did for an hour. Usually we go for an hour and a half, but it's kind of fun just to poke in here and just see what's gone on just this week. I'm sure there's a lot of other stuff that's gone on this week, and I just haven't been able to read it all because there's so much happening in the Discord. If you want to be a part of that weekly, everything from natural disasters to spiritualism that's happened throughout the ages. The eons, we cover all that, and we talk about that in our Discord daily. Talk about what's going on in your strange but normal life that you're living right now. Sometimes I wonder, what am I doing? I'm broadcasting on the internet like this is some kind of Art Bell show, but it's interesting to me. And if it's going to be interesting to me, it's got to be interesting to someone else. And so I'm going to show what I found and say, hey, look, this is something. This is something. This is interesting. And if you think this is something that we should that this is going to be a huge deception someday, and we need to push this out further, reveal the deception, hey, come on, help us out. Be a part of our Patreon system, patreon.com/strangenormal. And my name is Bradley. And this has been pure strangeness and absolute normalcy. Strange normal. We'll see you next time.
You're watching Strange Normal, where the truth is the truth.